The Urban Footprint Spring release transforms the way that you can create, customize, and analyze projects. We've added 8 key features, made dozens of smaller improvements, and fixed a lot of bugs since our last major release in December. To start with, Joe will be giving an overview of Urban Footprint and how it can be used to improve planning outcomes, accelerate projects, and save time and money. Then we'll introduce each of the new features we've added, but also be sure to provide you with the context for understanding how those new features fit into Urban Footprint's already large set of capabilities. Finally, we'll show you these new features in action, and you'll see just how easy planning can be using Urban Footprint. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to Joe.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. As Andy noted, I've been an urban planner and designer for more than 20 years, working with my partner, Peter Calthorpe, designing and advocating for sustainable communities across the globe. We're really excited to introduce you to the spring release of Urban Footprint, a revolutionary software platform that makes planners and designers' everyday tasks easier and brings powerful alternative development and analysis capability to more practitioners and cities across the United States. Before the team digs into our new features, I'll very briefly walk you through what Urban Footprint does, including its extensive national data library, easy project startup flow, and alternative development and analysis tools. As urban planners, designers, advocates, and analysts, we all play a critical role in making sure our communities meet the evolving needs of today and foster safe and sustainable places for future generations. As cities grapple with climate change, transportation gridlock, pollution, fiscal constraints, housing and affordability gaps, and health risks, planning practitioners have no shortage of challenges before them. And while urban planning and design professionals are stepping up to these challenges, planning technology is struggling to stay apace. The world's changing faster than we can keep up. Urban Footprint was built to fill this gap and support the practitioner's mission, to make day-to-day tasks easier and to provide easy access to powerful scenario development and analysis capabilities. A single web-based platform provides users with the data they need to understand existing conditions anywhere in the U.S., scenario workflows for rapid plan development and iteration, analysis models to understand impacts, and reports for clear communication to decision makers. With Urban Footprint, you can craft better proposals, presentations, and reports with ready-to-use data and the ability to make maps and analyze existing conditions in minutes. You can understand project impacts with scenario planning and built-in analytics. And you can lower technical friction so that more of your team can perform advanced mapping and scenario tasks. Urban Footprint is just easier to use than standard desktop GIS systems. You'll get up and running faster and spend more time planning and less time looking for data and cleaning it up. Testing scenarios is easy, and understanding impacts is built in. So I'm going to turn it over to Kellen Stoy now, who leads the development of our first of its kind, built for planners, Parcel Canvas. And don't forget to stick around for the live demo of each of the new features the team is going to introduce today.
All right. Thanks, Joe. So if you've used Urban Footprint before, you'll know that creating a project is easy. You just select a place where you want your project, click Create, and within seconds, Urban Footprint will generate a project ready for creating exhibits, generating scenarios, or running analysis. All projects include a land use base, the Urban Footprint base canvas, and dozens of additional reference layers. You'll see this in action in the demo a bit later in the webinar. I'm here to introduce Urban Footprint's new Parcels Anywhere dataset. It's now possible to create parcel scale projects almost anywhere in the United States. This is a huge step for Urban Footprint, as parcels are the fundamental building block for urban planning. You can quickly generate existing conditions exhibits, assess opportunity areas for a corridor, or join the parcels against other reference datasets like transit stops or demographic data. Urban Footprint sources this information through a strategic relationship with CoreLogic, the leading provider of real estate data in the United States. Urban Footprint users now have access to over 110 million parcels. We have coverage for every county in the United States with over 50,000 residents. This covers more than 72% of the total US population, or 224 million people. And if we don't have data for the place you're interested in, our relationship with CoreLogic ensures that we can get it for you. We can also load in your own parcel data if you have it available. Just like with our census block dataset, we've typed each parcel according to its land use, so you can immediately see the existing conditions for your project site. Additionally, you get over 70 attributes for each parcel, covering metrics like population, dwelling units by type, employment by sector, building area, and many more. With such quick and easy access to parcels, you can even explore cities and sites to support proposals, or to just ask a question about a site, neighborhood, or city. We employ strict quality controls to ensure that the data we have in our parcel canvas is in line with what actually exists on the ground. For every county that we have parcel data, we check the county's actual population and employment against the numbers that we've allocated in our parcel canvas. If our numbers are beyond the quality threshold that we've established, we flag the area for our data team to investigate. We are working to continuously improve the quality of parcel coverage, and as we release new counties, we'll update our release notes with those newly available areas. We have documentation on our website, and you can ask our support team if you have any questions about parcel coverage. Now, I'll turn it over to Brock to talk about leveraging this parcel data to create custom project areas.
Great, thank you, Kellen. As Kellen said, UrbanFootprint provides near complete parcel coverage of the U.S. The custom project area feature allows you to create a project at any scale. All you have to do is provide your project area boundary as a shapefile. UrbanFootprint also has a library of administrative boundaries preloaded, so you can quickly spin up projects based on the boundaries for cities, counties, and metro regions. This range of project creation options allows you to work across scales, from regional and comprehensive plans to master plans, specific plans, and station and corridor studies. So this is an example of a station area project with the city of Sunnyvale, California as the context area. Here's an example of a neighborhood scale project. This is the Pacific Heights neighborhood in San Francisco, California. Example of a corridor project from Bloomington, Indiana. Here's an example of a redevelopment project of the East Town Mall in Madison, Wisconsin. And note that you can even create projects with multiple study areas, like this example from Savannah, Georgia. Now that we have a project, so now we're going to talk about the Built Form Manager. UrbanFootprint's new Built Form Manager brings advanced customization to your projects by allowing you to create unique building and place types. Building place types capture the complexity, range, and nuance of urban form and land use. You can think of them as your own customizable land uses and land use codes. This customization enables you to build scenarios tailored to any local condition. Each project comes preloaded with UrbanFootprint's curated library of building and place types. You can use these types right out of the box or tailor them to your project. You can also create your own from scratch. The Built Form Manager allows you to customize your development options to the needs of your specific project. You can tailor types to local land use codes and the prevailing development condition for the region. Building and place types enable you to work fluidly across scales, from the individual site, corridor, or neighborhood up to the district, city, and region. I'll turn it over to Kellen now to speak about our analysis modules.
All right, thanks, Brock. So building off of our base canvas and the ability to quickly create new scenarios populated with custom building types, UrbanFootprint also gives users access to quick, calibrated analysis modules available at the click of a button. This spring release includes the introduction of our Transportation Anywhere module. This means that for any project you create, you'll be able to quickly see estimates of trip counts, mode share, and vehicle miles traveled. The UrbanFootprint Transportation module is based off of the EPA-certified MXD model. MXD starts with ITE trip generation rates and then adjusts vehicle trip estimation based on factors such as transit access and walkability factors like the mixture and density of different land uses. These trip generation rates are then combined with average trip lengths, which UF generates on the fly to be sensitive to land use changes in each scenario. Our transportation model is specifically sensitive to land use changes. For example, as part of the model, we run a network analysis of jobs accessible by transit within different commute time thresholds. We do this by pulling in the most recent GTFS transit feed data available and matching it up with the road network. Additionally, our travel model pulls in a context area of 150 kilometers, meaning that our model is aware of the regional job and population attractors that impact travel behavior, even if your project is just a few parcels or a single corridor. These transportation outputs are also incorporated into our emissions and household cost analysis modules, making these modules sensitive to changes in transportation behavior, as well as emissions or costs associated with buildings. We've compared the outputs against census travel behavior data and against regional travel model outputs where available to validate our model. The model was built and tested over many years working with transport experts, academics, MPOs, and regional agencies. This release also includes the addition of our conservation module, which was created in partnership with the Nature Conservancy. The conservation module measures the impacts of land use changes on water demand and quality, habitat of critical species, agricultural production and crop value, and above and below ground carbon storage. The conservation module is available for project locations within California. In addition to this new analytical capability, the introduction of the conservation model adds substantial open space and conservation data to the system, including statewide coverage for conservation lands, agricultural production data, and soil and carbon storage. Here we're looking at the conservation base canvas layer. And here's an example of some of the outputs from the conservation model, looking at scenarios created in Sonoma County, California. Each scenario accommodates the same amount of new housing, but increased greenfield development in different scenarios is shown to impact above and below ground carbon stocks. This is in addition to the impacts on endangered species, habitat, valuable agricultural land, and water demand. Now I'm going to pass it over to Jason to talk about how you can get summary data, like the data you see here to create these charts, out of Urban Footprint with report export.
Thanks, Kellen. Now, taking your understanding of how to create scenarios and analyze data, let's look at additional ways that you can interface with Urban Footprint. We've rounded out our export capabilities with this spring release. Report export is now just one of the ways that you can get access to your information in a different format and available for use outside of Urban Footprint. It allows you to generate output from the Urban Footprint analysis and reporting modules, and then turns it into an Excel report. You can also export most of Urban Footprint's maps and data layers to shapefiles or spreadsheet formats. Urban Footprint has a range of base map options that allow you to customize the look and feel of your maps. Once you've decided on the base map that's right for your map, there are new features that allow you to go to further enhance them. One of those features is 3D buildings. 3D buildings may be added to any map. This feature is based on actual building footprint and physical height. With over 17 million 3D buildings, this feature is mostly focused on higher intensity metropolitan areas and features a growing database collected from Mapbox via OpenStreetMap. This feature is great for preliminary research or contextual documents so that you or your clients have a sense of what's actually on the ground. You also have the ability to add elevation contours to any base map. The contour lines indicate topography by joining points of equal elevation. The contour intervals scale as you zoom in and out on your map. All of these map features allow you to get a sense of constraints and opportunities for a site easily and as early in the process as when you're pulling together a proposal or existing conditions documents.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to transition into our demo. But if you have any questions right now, please feel free to type those into the chat window and we will take a moment to answer them. Okay, at this point, we're going to turn things over to Kellen to proceed with our demonstration.
All right. Great. So as we mentioned in the presentation, you can now create parcel data projects across the US. To do this, we use the Create Project workflow. For this demo, I'm going to build a project in Champaign, Illinois. So first, I'm going to click on my Projects dropdown and go to Create Project. Here, I'll type in Champaign and select my organization. And now I just type in the city name, and there we have our option, Champaign, Illinois. Now the default for creating a project is a census block, but now you can see you can also select parcel. So I'm going to choose parcel and then click create. It will take slightly longer for UrbanFootprint to build a parcel canvas compared to a block canvas, as there's just more geometries to process. That said, a parcel canvas still should load in a couple minutes or less. And as you see here, that loaded in just a few seconds. So I can activate my Champaign, Illinois canvas. And here you see that within seconds, we have the parcels for Champaign, Illinois ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and create a new scenario in this project. And here I can show off how easy it is to do some quick queries to filter down this parcel data set. Working at the parcel scale gives us much more detail as you carry out your planning process. So for example, I can go ahead and filter down to just the parcels that were typed as vacant residential. I can already see that there are 350 or 335 parcels across the city like this. I can go in and zoom into some of these, right? And I can even put the satellite imagery behind and change the opacity, to get a sense of what these parcels look like. Okay, and now as I'm in a scenario, I can go ahead, get rid of that bar, and I'll just select this row of vacant parcels right here. And just like that, I can create and pick a type. Let's add these as large lot and hit paint. And just like that, we're off and running in a new scenario. So in addition to the parcel base, all projects in UrbanFootprint are provisioned with useful reference layers. We just got to go here to the layer manager. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and search for transit data. And right there, we have transit stops and transit lines. We can look at some metadata for it and add both of these to the layer list. And very quickly, I can reorder these and go ahead and add them to the map. And zoom out a little bit. And just like that, we have added the transit data for Champaign, Illinois. We also have census reference data that we can dig into. Let's add this. Yep. We'll turn off our parcel canvas. And here we're looking at poverty prevalence in Champaign, Illinois. We also have population by age. Scroll down here. Population 18 to 24, and it shows around campus what you would expect. Okay, so now building off of our parcel canvas, I can also show you how you can create a custom project area by importing a shapefile. So I will turn these off, and now I'm going to go back to create project, and this time I'm going to create a corridor level project in Sunnyvale, California. I'm going to call it Corridor Plan, Sunnyvale, California. Organization is CalTherp Analytics. And instead of just typing in the location, now I'm going to upload from a polygon boundary. So if I click here, it takes me to downloads. And I have my pre-processed zipped up shapefile. I'll open that up. The first thing it's going to ask is for me to give this project canvas a name. So I'm going to call this El Camino Real Corridor. Okay. And again, like before, I get the option of creating a parcel or block project. I'll create parcel here. We also have the option to add a context area, which just gives us a sense of what's happening in the surrounding area around our project. So I'm just going to pick the city of Sunnyvale. Here we are, Sunnyvale, California, and I'll also add parcels. And just like that, I'll hit Create Project, and voila, here we are in Sunnyvale, California. I'll activate the corridor. Just waiting for the map to catch up. And we also have now this context area canvas. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and change the opacity, which is very easy to do in UrbanFootprint, just like that. Okay, so there we can see we have the parcels for our El Camino Real corridor in Sunnyvale, California. And with the context area canvas, we have information for the surrounding city as well. And if we even want more context for this, we can show off the 3D buildings feature. So I'm going to go down to the base map option down here in the bottom right. Maybe I'll change that to a generic map. And I will select 3D buildings. And as Jason mentioned in the presentation, this is going to add the buildings on top of our layers. So as we zoom in, there you'll see we have the 3D buildings for Sunnyvale, California. And looking from straight above, you can't really get the sense of 3D, which we can go at an oblique view, and just like that, get a quick sense of the surrounding area as well. We'll turn off the 3D buildings and now show off the elevation contours as well. So I'll turn off this context area canvas, and it shows that Sunnyvale is fairly flat. You see it has labels, 30 meters and 40 meters. And if I zoom out, as we know, there are some hills in the surrounding area, and you can get a sense of very quickly the difference in elevation in the surrounding area as well. As you zoom in, the lines are going to become more pronounced and at a smaller scale. So I think that's about it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brock to show off how you can create custom building types with our Built Form Manager.
Great, thank you, Kellen. So as a quick overview, UrbanFootprint has 5 different modes. So we're currently in Explore mode, where you can view data layers on the map. You can analyze scenarios across a broad range of metrics, which Kellen will talk about in more depth. Report mode puts your scenarios and analysis results side by side for easy review. Build mode has all the tools you need to develop scenarios. As I said before, every project comes preloaded with UrbanFootprint's curated building and place type library. So this is a drop-down list of the default place types that come loaded in each project. You can scroll through them and check out their different attributes. Same thing for building types, which you would typically paint on a parcel, as opposed to the place type, which we would be painting at the district scale. So the 5th mode, which is what I'm here to talk to you about, is the Built Form Manager. This is where you can customize building and place types. Remember, you can also use default types to get moving quickly in any project. The manager allows you to customize for projects when you need to. The Built Form Manager has a number of elements used to customize land uses and project settings. The Library Settings tab is where we set building and place type defaults and change project variables like average household size and other key stats. When we begin a new project, we will often start by reviewing our library settings. In this tab, we can define high-level settings that affect the population and employment characteristics of the types in our project library, and specify defaults for some of the more detailed inputs required when creating types. You don't need to make any changes here, and most people will stick with the defaults, but all the settings are here ready to be customized as needed. So the rest of the manager's functions are focused on creating and editing land uses. Let's do a quick walkthrough of how to edit a building, which is effectively a detailed land use. Note that you can also create a building from scratch by clicking Add New here. For now, I'll start by adding one of UF's default building types. The mixed-use Gaia building from here in Berkeley, California. So I just quickly searched for that. I'm going to go ahead and open it. So let's say we want to, contextualize this to Sunnyvale, California. I will create a copy. I will replace the word Berkeley with Sunnyvale. Now go ahead and click Save. I now have a copy of that building to work with. I'm going to go ahead and open it. So we start by defining the site for our building. We set the total parcel area, which, since we're not starting from scratch, is already set, and then we distribute that area. Let's say that to contextualize this building to Sunnyvale, we wanted to include more non-hardscape area. So I could change this from 1% of our site to 3%. You can see, since I increased that proportion, that we are now over allocated. So I'm just going to make a few quick adjustments to make sure that everything adds up to 100. All right, so there we go. We have our site area. Now that we have our site settled, we can address the building. To do that, we start by defining the total gross floor area, just down here in this blue column. We then distribute the floor area to residential and non-residential uses. Finally, we set other building characteristics, which include the number of floors, floor height, etc. So the last step is to distribute floor area from the building by residential type and non-residential employment sector. For example, all of the residential floor area in the Gaia building is dedicated to multifamily units, and all of the non-residential floor area is retail. Finally, we can hit save, and our building is ready for use. So building types are typically painted on parcels. Place types, on the other hand, which we'll go ahead and look at now, are used to paint districts, as they incorporate the full suite of uses in a district, including streets, parks, and civic uses. Let's quickly look at a place type. I'll search for city mixed use. Go ahead and open that. Place types are created with a weighted mix of building types, which, okay, this is taking a minute to load, but when this loads, you'll see a list of the different building types that were added together to create this place type. In a place type, we additionally define the right-of-way area. As a final note, I'll go ahead and show you that any new building or place type that we create in the Built Form Manager will then go ahead and show up in these painting menus that we looked at before. So that wraps up our quick tour of the Built Form Manager. Note that there are a lot more resources that support the use of this feature, given its complexity and depth. I'll turn it over to Kellen now to talk about UrbanFootprint's analysis modules.
So for the analysis modules included in this release, I'm going to demo them both in the same project area. I've set up a quick project in Merced, California. Let's go over there now. I'm just going to scroll down this layer list until there we are, Merced, California. Okay, so here I created 3 scenarios, 2 greenfield growth options in peripheral areas, and 1 infill scenario that focuses growth on vacant land downtown. All right, we'll zoom in. First, I'm going to turn off these elevation contours. And let's do a quick look at these scenarios. Turn off these analysis outputs. Okay. So the first scenario, I've just added some detached single-family homes over on the east side of town. The second scenario, I've painted in some infill multifamily development on vacant land near downtown. And in the third, I did a very quick paint on the south side, and again, another greenfield site with vacant land down here, this yellow area. Okay, so by activating the Analyze mode, the first thing we'll notice is that there are two new options for these analysis icons. One is transportation, this purple car here, and the second is conservation, which is the green leaf. I can run these modules just like any other. You can just click and either run for the entire project or run for the scenario. As these modules are more complex than others in our system, they'll take slightly longer to run. While most modules take a few seconds or a couple minutes, in general, transportation will run in about 15 minutes for a project with about 30,000 parcels or blocks, and conservation will take about 15 minutes as well, though this varies based on the size of the project and the number of paints that are involved in each scenario. So let's take a look at the transportation model outputs first. I'll click on the icon, and that will bring up by default our vehicle miles traveled output, which defaults to show vehicle miles traveled daily per household. As you can see in the map, first you'll note that the downtown Merced area has lower daily household VMT, while peripheral areas tend to have higher. It also brings up our summary charts, which cover mode share for transit, walker bike, and auto, the trip counts by both MXD estimations and ITE, Institute for Transportation Engineers, and then also normalized outputs like per capita VMT and vehicle trips and per household trips. All right. And then the second output, the spatial output, is vehicle trip counts by type. So we can deactivate vehicle miles traveled, and you'll see here by default that this outputs a map of walker bike mode share. We can change that to look at any of these other outputs as well. So we could look at, instead of walker bike, maybe auto mode share. Okay. There you go. All right, and now let's take a look at the conservation module. We'll activate that here. So by default, the spatial output for conservation module scenarios just shows the areas of change and what they were changed to. So in this case, it's showing that we developed this agricultural land on the south side of town into residential development. You see that on the map, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see the charts showing the change in the different aspects of the module, including land cover, impacts on agricultural demand, water use, carbon stock, and habitat for endangered species. Okay, and now with both of these, we can go into report mode to see how they compare. So first, we can activate just the general scenario stats for each of these scenarios to get a sense of the actual changes that were implemented. Here we can see that the greenfield scenario for the south side by far added the most population and dwelling units, whereas the others are more gradual increases. Now, if we click on the Transportation tab, we'll see for each of these, both the total VMT estimated by the model for each scenario, and also the normalized VMT per capita and VMT per household. We also have the greenhouse gas emissions associated with this vehicle travel and the total transportation costs and cost by type for households, broken down into ownership and maintenance and auto fuel. If we go into the conservation module, you'll see that that's broken out into each type or each submodule in the conservation analysis. So we have the general change in land cover types by acre, the carbon outputs, so the change in the carbon stock, impacts on water demand, change in land area for the habitat of different species, and the change in production value for different agricultural crops, and change in acres by crop class. So this would be a good example to show a reporting export as well, as these charts carry a lot of information in them. So I'm just going to compare the two greenfield scenarios that actually impacted agricultural land here. And I can click on the export button here. And that will export a Excel file. Okay, so with this, you have an Excel file containing all of the data that you see in the charts, and you can open that up and create your own summary charts as you saw in our presentation. So that wraps up our demo. I'm now going to turn it over to Andy to review any questions that you guys have asked.
Okay, thank you, Kellen, and thank you, Jason and Brock and Joe. We do have a few questions here that have been coming in that we'll pose to the team here. First questions have to do with context area. So the first question is context area needed? Is it something that you have to create at the beginning of a project? And then the second follow-up question is, can you change or add a context layer after your project has initially been created?
I'll just quickly, this is Joe. The answer to the first part of that question is the context area is optional. So you don't have to set a context area. You can just have a project area, whether that be a custom area or a city or a county or a metropolitan region. It's there because, as you all on the webinar know, that the vast majority of projects care about the context within which they sit, whether it's a city looking to a county or it's a corridor looking to a city or a county. We've provided that flexibility. When it comes to adding additional contextual data to a map or to a project, yeah, absolutely. So you can add additional reference layers, you can add all kinds of contextual data. You can also upload your own data into the system, so you are not limited, even though we have dozens of data sets that will show up when you start a project. Of course, we're not going to have everything you need. We want to make it a lot easier to get started, but there's going to be some specific site considerations or data that you have from a city that you're going to need to bring in. So you can do that through our upload feature, which is sort of available right through the layer menu. And hopefully that answers your question for now.
Great, thank you, Joe. A couple more questions here coming in. This one has to do with the build form manager. When we're first starting a project, is using the build form manager something I have to do? Is this required for me to get started, or can I bring this in and start using it once I've gotten a good sense of what my project site entails?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Urban Footprint comes preloaded with our default curated building and place type library that gives you a set that you can easily and quickly get started with. So you don't even have to enter the build form manager. You don't have to edit those types at all. That's just something that you have the power to do, and once you get farther into a project, you might want to go ahead and do.
The other thing I'll just point out, this is Joe here, is that as Brock walked you through the build form manager, you saw there are lots of detailed components that include things like average employees per square foot or the average size of a unit in a multifamily structure. UF will be set with defaults for those. So we've taken typicals, and so that when you start even creating a brand new building, the defaults are just going to show up. So you don't have to worry about all those things. If you want to change them, you can. Because we know that in many cases, particularly developer-driven projects, you have a very specific townhome that you need to place within a master plan. So you can go in and create that very specific townhome either by editing one of the townhomes that come out of the box or by just creating yours from the ground up. You can change the unit size and you can change even employment distribution within a building. You never have to do that. So this is definitely a power feature, but it's one that we know is needed in many cases. So it's available, but not required in any case.
Great, thank you, Joe. We have another question here related to transportation and the analysis engine that Kellen walked us through. The question has to do with, is it possible to kind of further calibrate the maybe inputs to the transportation analytics or any of the analytics in general?
Yes, that's definitely a good question. We've designed our analysis modules such that they have specific places where we've parameterized the inputs so that these can be changed. And one of those for the transportation model that we've just been working on is the ability to, for example, swap out our estimation of average trip lengths with skims that might come from a regional travel model. So that's one of the ways that you can, if you have better information for a region or information that a region requires you to use, you can integrate that into UrbanFootprint. Currently, it's in a state where you would reach out to us and we can help you get it hooked up, and we're working to make that user-facing very soon.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kellen. Another question here has to do with how often data in UrbanFootprint gets updated. So we just introduced the parcel data. We know that land use changes pretty frequently. How do we deal with those changes, and how do we convey that back to users of UrbanFootprint?
Sure. So this is Joe again, quickly answering that one. So I think as Kellen pointed out in the presentation and in showing you the parcel data, one of the primary sources of that data is CoreLogic through a partnership we have with them. So we're able to pull the national canvas in. We get quarterly updates on that parcel data. And in general, the parcel data is within 1 year. So I think as most of you on this webinar know, parcel data, particularly as it's coming from cities, is often not updated all that often. So we do our best to update it as often as those updates are coming in. It will be updated at least quarterly. And so, for example, greenfield locations that have been subdivided and have gone from one large parcel to many small parcels as part of that process, we'll pick that up to the CoreLogic updates, and we'll be updating quarterly. In addition to that, we've been reaching out to major metropolitan regions in California and beyond in order to bring their specific data sets into the system, and we'll have we currently already have a growing library of things like current and future zoning for metropolitan areas, updated building permits, and pipeline projects for areas. So this is by no means a static database. It is constantly being updated, and there are constantly reference data sets related to the parcels that are being updated and integrated into the system as well. We'd also love to hear from people out there, different kinds of practitioners and different cities, as to the kinds of data sets that are sort of your usual suspects. When you start a project, I use these, and we're going to have a lot of them, but we're not going to have everything you've ever used. We would love to know what those are, and we would love to work to get more of those data sets into the system. The system is built to absorb those quickly.
Thank you, Joe. Another question here has to do with our custom project site creation. Question is, if the person doesn't know GIS and can't, create a shapefile on their own, how do they create a custom project?
Yeah. So we actually, when you open up the Create Project dialog, there's actually a handy tool that we link to, in which you don't really have to have any GIS skills. You can literally just kind of like take a pen and draw on a map and select any area for your project boundary. We're going to pull that up now for you to take a look. So you can just zoom in to any location, kind of open up your polygon tool and just go ahead and draw. It's really as simple as that. Then you'll save that file, and then where it prompts you in the application to upload, you'll upload that. So you'd want to save that as a shapefile.
And with this, you can literally create, any shape you want without having to ever go into a GIS system. This is a super handy tool. You can create anything you'd like and make that shape. You can also use UF. We just actually went through a process where we explored development capacity around transit stations in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we actually just went ahead and used UrbanFootprint to create the buffers we wanted. So we just picked the station area. We said, give me 1/2 and 1/4 mile buffers. We then used those buffers to produce the shapefile in UrbanFootprint. Because remember, you can export any layer from UrbanFootprint to a shapefile, and then subsequently use that to set your project boundary. So it's really quite easy. And with this, you've got the flex to basically set a project at any scale.
Okay, great. So it looks like, well, Kellen is taking advantage of the custom project we just showed how to use using that tool. Another question here has to do with the 3D buildings that we saw. Is it possible to effectively bring in your own 3D building layer? Is that something, so if you have access to that information yourself, is that able to be rendered in UrbanFootprint?
So you can bring your building footprint layer into UrbanFootprint. So we'd be able to visualize those footprints and we'd be able to turn the map oblique. Right now we're limited to the OpenStreetMap 3D building data set. We are certainly going to be adding substantially more. That one evolves on its own, and we link to that. We have a data pipeline to OSM. We are also adding additional 3D building data sets from CoreLogic and other locations. And if that's a particularly kind of poignant need, if you will, reach out to us and we'll talk about how we might be able to solve that in the system.
Okay, great, Joe. So we'll do last call for questions here. One more question here has to do with maybe additional data that may be coming from CoreLogic. So we talked about how they're a leading real estate data provider. Is there any data in addition to the parcel data that we looked at that will be available in UrbanFootprint?
Yes, that's a very good question. We're actually in the process of releasing the supplemental data set that will have additional information that comes from the original assessor's data, such as building vintage, when it was created, when last construction happened to that building, the building area, the original land use codes that came from CoreLogic, if it's available from the assessor, the zoning code that parcel falls within, address information, and then also the tax data related to the land value, the improvement value, the ratio between those two, and the actual amount of tax that each parcel paid.
And just to put something out there, so what we do also is we take that land and improvement value and then we process that into a ratio of land to improvement value, which in most states is actually a really valuable way to quickly assess redevelopment potential. So you can look at underutilization on a particular parcel simply with that ratio. So you load that data set into any project, or that data set will just arrive in any project that has parcels. And then you can very quickly look at that ratio. And then a very typical workflow would be to, for example, say, hey, we want to look at, we're looking at a transit-oriented development around a new bus rapid transit stop in Madison, Wisconsin. This actually happened. We then want to look at a particular type of land use, and then within that land use, we want to look at quote-unquote underutilized parcels, and you can define that based on any ratio, and you can further look at things like FAR, floor area ratio, to examine underutilization. So the idea is that this, out of the box, you have a data tool set, and you're prepared to make those assessments very quickly, and even do citywide assessments very quickly. So if you just want to do a quick screen for underutilization across the entire city of Sunnyvale, for example, where there's a lot of opportunity on a strip commercial corridor, you can use this data set to support that argument and to support scenario development or alternatives development or even just existing conditions assessments.
Well, great. Thank you, Joe, and thank you to Brock and Jason and Kellen for the work they did here presenting the new features of the spring release. At this point, we're going to be concluding the webinar. We, as I mentioned at the beginning, will be distributing the recording of the webinar to you, as well as making that available online. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, either directly if you have our contact info, or through the website, and we will be sure to follow up with you as quickly as we can. So on behalf of us all, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.